I want to cover the while loop with you. While, W-H-I-L-E. It's the simplest of the loops, and I'll just quickly jump over to the documentation and show you. In fact, the documentation even echoes what I'm saying here. The while loop, it says, is the simplest type of loop in PHP. They behave just like their C counterparts. So the syntax here is going to look very familiar to you if you're working with any other language that uses the C style syntax. Basically, what happens here is that so long as your expression that you're evaluating is true, then the statements that are going to appear under your while loop are going to continue to execute in each iteration, so long as the expression is true. So the only thing about it is that if you aren't mindful of the expression and aren't completely aware of whether or not it's actually going to eventually become false, you could find yourself in a situation where you've got an infinite loop. But in a lot of cases, you're usually closely watching the variables that you're evaluating, and it may not happen. But I'll give you a really, really simple example. We'll say I is equal to, we'll say, 1. Right? We're initializing it outside of the loop in this case. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just set the skeleton for our evaluation here. We'll say, while I is less than 11, then we'll go ahead and do some work here. We'll say the number is now I, excuse me, try that again, I, and we'll make it pretty with a line break. Now here's the thing, if you are going to just run this right now, if I'm initializing I and I'm saying while I is less than 11, of course you've set it to 1 right here, this is going to run forever unless after I put my statement here, I do something to increase the value of I. It's like if this doesn't happen, then this loop's going to go on forever, which we don't want. In this case, I'm incrementing it right after I do my output. So let's try this. Right? And it does exactly what we're expecting it to do. Let's say I didn't do this. I have no idea what this is going to do to my machine right now. I don't know if this is going to kill it or not. It might, so I'm prepared to restart my server if I need to. But if you don't actually account for the value of the I integer and you just let this go on forever, it'll just kind of just show you that the number is now 1 infinitely. Let's have a look and see what that looks like. It just keeps on going and going and going and going and going. So I'm scrolling right now, and you see up here it's doing work because it's evaluating this. It's actually iterating this many, many times. It's not going to stop. So I've just stopped it in my browser. I don't know if that necessarily means that I've stopped it on the server. Let's see. The server doesn't look like it's freaking out. I'm starting to hear my fan spinning up though. So let me do this. I'm going to go ahead and close that out, and I'm going to start that up again. So I've actually had to go in and stop my PHP server, or my web server rather, and restart it because I've got myself caught in an infinite loop. So I'll go ahead and I'll put that back in. We'll make sure that we've got that increment happening, and we should be in good shape now. Let me go to the browser and make sure that we're good to go again. And we are. We're back in business. So that's the thing to really kind of keep in mind. You're going to initialize your variable outside of your loop. And all you're doing is you're saying, so long as this is true, then do all the things that I want you that I want to actually happen within the curly braces, right? So this will continue to happen. You have to just make sure that it's accounting for this condition here. That's actually saying, okay, I'm evaluating this variable, and something is happening to this variable to eventually make this change from true to false. That's very important. So not accounting for that is going to catch you in an infinite loop. So before we conclude on loops, I want to show you a couple of other things. And I'll put those up here in notes just to make sure that we've got them in front of us. I want to show you break, and I want to show you continue. Because these are two things that you need to be aware of. There's going to be cases where you may not necessarily want to continue your loop for a specific reason. Rather than letting it complete, you may want to bust out of it early, and in that case you would use break. And then there may very well be cases where you're iterating over a collection of arrays, for example, and a certain condition applies that maybe you don't want to do any evaluation. You just want to continue to the next iteration, and that's where you'd use continue. So I'd like to show you that, and we'll do that by setting you up with a standard for loop. We'll initialize it as 0, and we'll say that as I is less than 10, go ahead and increment by 1 on each of these iterations here. All right, so what this is going to do is it's going to show us 0 through 9. And just to make sure that we're going down the right path here, I'll make sure that I output this and let you take a look at it. So what we've got is we've got a loop of just numbers. We're going to output those numbers to the screen, make sure everything is there. Sure enough, it is. 0 through 9 is exactly what we were expecting. So what we'll do is we'll say, I want to go ahead and I want to echo, but even though we're going all the way up to 9, I'm going to say if I is equal to the number 6, then I don't want to do anything. I just want to go ahead and I want to break. So when I get to 6, after I've output it, because it's coming after this echo expression here, after I've output 6, I want to break, which means I will no longer go all the way to 9. I'm going to break at this point, which is what I've done here. So my loop is actually defining a loop that's going to start at 0, and it's going to terminate when it's less than 10, which is the number 9. It's going to increment by 1. But I've got this special case here where I say, nope, you know what? When I is 6, we're done. And that's what break is for. So I'll remove that, because there's something else I want to do. I've decided that I don't want to do any sort of output in a case where the number is equal to 4. 4 is offensive to me. I don't want to see it. I'm going to use the continue. So what this is saying is, in the case of I being equal to 4, continue. Don't evaluate anything underneath here. Just go to the next iteration. So what I should see is I should see output of 0 all the way up to 9. But it should skip over 4 because I've explicitly asked, when I is equal to 4, do nothing, just go to the next iteration. That's what continue does. So when we go to the browser, I got 0, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So that is break and continue. Break, obviously, terminate the loop prematurely based on a specific condition that you define. Or continue, go to the next iteration immediately upon the continue expression based on a specific condition that you apply. In this case, I is equal to 4. So just to kind of wrap up, while loop, very simple. You got to make sure that you're mindful of your conditions and how that works to avoid infinite loops. And of course, in any of these loops, in the for, in the for each, in the while, if you need to break or continue the iteration prematurely, you've got that ability as well.